Hello friends, my name is Sive and welcome to today's video, which is books that I wanted to cry at so badly but I couldn't. And you might be wondering, Sive, why don't you talk about the books that you actually have cried at? It's funny you should ask that because that was the idea for this video. Noelle Gallagher recently put up a video where she talked about all the books that she's cried at, and I was like, that looks like a fun video because I definitely feel a lot of emotions towards books. I'm a crybaby for sure. So I was going through all of the books that I've read, and the total number of books that I have cried at is only 3, which really surprised me. And while I was going through, I was like, wow, I don't remember crying at this book, but it definitely like pulled a really solid emotion out of me. I wouldn't say that not crying at these books took away my emotive response. Individuals will cry at certain books and not cry at others, and it's just personal preference. Sometimes stuff just hits harder. These books, however, fall under the category of extremely hard-hitting for me. Emotionally, got me to think about it. I was sitting on these characters or this plot line or whatever for days and days and days. It definitely emoted a feeling of either happiness or sadness, in which hypothetically I wish I would have cried, because I don't know about you guys, but crying often like releases a lot of that tension. And so I didn't get the chance to do that with these books, but they are incredibly amazing. And if you stick around till the end, I will tell you the 3 books that I have cried at. So let's get started. So the first book that I wanted to cry at so badly, but for some reason I just couldn't, is The Deep by River Solomon. And this book is a relatively short fantasy about a community of mermaids who were originated from women, slave women, who were pregnant and thrown over slave ships centuries ago. This book deals a lot with like memories, feelings of belonging and not belonging. Our main character, Yetu, has an incredible burden on her shoulders, as she is the one responsible for carrying all the memories of every ancestor of this tribe. And the tribe is called the Wajinru, and they have had centuries and centuries of hurt, and Yetu is the one carrying all of this. She's called the historian. I didn't know too much going into this book. That was pretty much the extent of my knowledge, and that made my reading experience amazing. I absolutely love this book and highly recommend it, but it dealt with a lot of grief and a lot of hurt, and there were moments where she was talking about how she felt carrying all this stuff which nobody else was able to relate, and it was just heartbreaking. Didn't cry though, and I wish I had, because my chest hurt the whole time. And I don't know about you guys, but a good cry is sometimes what you need to release that. So the next book that I almost cried at was Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson, and this book is a YA contemporary mystery thriller. So it follows our main character, Enchanted, who is an extremely talented singer, and she gets noticed by this famous R&B singer called Corey Fields at an audition. Corey and her start this relationship. He's older, she's younger, a lot of lines are blurred, and it essentially goes into an abusive relationship between these 2 individuals. And I'm not gonna say too much about it, but just the content of it was definitely really heartbreaking. Watching somebody feel responsible for someone else's actions, watching the process of gaslighting, kind of going from like the beginning of like intrigue and interest and like, I'm gonna provide you with all of this fame and like parties and cool glam stuff, and like I'm gonna offer you opportunity, and then turning it into a manipulative relationship. It was definitely really heartbreaking, and I wish I would have cried. This book I definitely flew through the beginning of, and I hit about the halfway point and we started getting into really rough stuff, and I just had to like slow down. I hurt so much for Enchanted. I hurt so much for her family. Yeah, it was a tough one. Please just look at the trigger warnings. There's a lot of really tough stuff in this. So yeah, always do your research. Ultimately, the book was incredibly well written. I will be reading from Tiffany D. Jackson again and again. There is that thriller element. This is not a spoiler, it's how the summary starts, but Corey Fields is killed, the R&B singer who notices her, and everything's kind of like pointing at Enchanted. So you're still also getting this like, who done it, did she do it, how did this happen thing, kind of the mystery element as well. It was very good. The next book is City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert, and this book is about a main character who, after failing out of her first year of college, is sent to go live with her crazy aunt in Manhattan. And her aunt isn't crazy, she's just really not traditional. This aunt runs a theater, and she employs a lot of very interesting people: dancers, choreographers, managers, singers, costume designers, all sorts of kind of like fun misfit people all come together to get into trouble and also like be a family. That was the thing that I thought I was going to cry at, is the found family element of this book is so strong. The City of Girls is told from the perspective of the main character when she's old. It covers a lot of topics around human desire, human connection, our strive for community, and the human's innate ability to create community wherever they are. It was extremely emotional watching this person who was constantly rejected and constantly told that they're not doing the right thing or they're not feeling the right way come into security in her own identity. It was really cool, and it definitely is something that still sticks with me. Elizabeth Gilbert is a fantastic writer, and she did a really good job of pulling those emotions from me, and it was definitely one that I wish had made me cry, but it didn't. But it was very good. The next one is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, and this one is considered a classic. Sylvia Plath is a classic author and poet from the 20th century. This book was published in the 1950s, and it follows our main character as she goes through her life as a student in academia and then into the world of finding a job and finding a relationship. But the thing that really made this book hard in a way that I wish I would have cried is our main character, Esther Greenwood, struggles with mental health, depression. So there is a lot of trigger warnings to be had. I would definitely do your research. If that type of stuff is gonna be tough for you, don't read this book. It is vivid. And it's not vivid in so much of a graphic way, but Sylvia Plath does such a good job of like reaching into the reader's mind and rationalizing the decisions that Esther is making to you. I felt that. I felt like I was definitely being pulled into Esther's manipulation. And so thinking about the individuals in her life who she has affected, how they have affected her, how she even got to the place that she was struggling with stuff like this so deeply and innately and every day, relentlessly. It was tough. It was tough. And I wish I had cried at this book because it definitely left like my chest feeling very tight. To this book, I feel like I had a physical response. I would have much rather that physical response be crying because, again, I feel that there's some sort of like release in that, and this book definitely just like left me feeling tense for a while. And so that's not really one that I would like recommend. Kind of similar with Grown. Like, I would be very careful of who I would recommend this book to. Not because it's not good, but it's just because the content in it is not appropriate for everybody. Keep that in mind. The next book I want to talk about that I wish had made me cry was The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Clune, and this book is a fantasy. It is following our main character who is in kind of like a DSS position. So he's like a caseworker, and he goes to this island to inspect an orphanage. This orphanage houses really unusual children. There's a lot of prejudice towards these children because they look evil, they sound evil, but he gets to kind of like get to know them more. All of this is facilitated by the manager of the orphanage, who our main character and him start to cultivate a relationship, and eventually this turns into a found family story. I cannot stress how cute and amazing and wholesome and fulfilling this book was. Watching our main character, Linus, grow from kind of this crotchety old like social worker who's just like doing his job and just trying to get by, and have him like discover a new type of spirit and discover a new drive for life and beauty and connection with these individuals that are just like not what he thought. It was really cool, and I definitely wish I would have cried. And I've seen a lot of reviews on this book and a lot of people did cry, and I wish I had cried. These would have been some good solid happy tears. It was really wholesome. It lifted my heart, it lifted my spirit for sure, and that's what I want like in a book like that. And I wish I would have cried. It was definitely very enchanting. It's fantastical. It's got elements of magic and beings, kind of like cool mythical creatures, and all of these kids are so different, and watching Linus discover all of this is just like pure. It is a pure book. I loved it. You should read this. This is one I can solidly recommend. You should read The House in the Cerulean Sea for sure. And the last book that I want to talk to you about is The River by Peter Heller. And this book I wish I had cried at for a little bit more of a simpler reason. This is a novel about two college-age kids who have been on canoe trips and they're really outdoorsy. Camping and backpacking is totally their thing. They plan this summer trip to go canoeing down the Masqual River, and it goes awry. The simple reason is that there is a character in this book that dies, that I did not want to die at all. One of the most potent character deaths for me because I did not see it coming. It hurt me, it definitely made me audibly gasp, but I didn't cry, and I care about him so much, and I think freaking like still talk and think about this person, and I didn't cry. And so this video is more turning into like, I'm frustrated, I wish I would have cried. And that's like kind of what it is. A book being able to evoke that type of emotion is an incredible accomplishment by the writer. All that to say, all of these books definitely impacted me because I still think about them enough to make a video about them, and I still wish that I would have freaking cried. Again, the cool thing is kind of like watching what makes people cry versus what doesn't, and it's definitely a personality difference, it's a reader difference, it's a reader preference. So yeah, those are all the books that I wish I would have cried at, but I didn't. So to round out the video, if you've made it this far, I'll tell you the 3 books that I have actually cried at. The first 2 are like a pair. So Talia Hibbert's Brown Sister trilogy, soon to be trilogy. The last one is coming out on March 9th. I'm very excited. The first one being Get a Clue, Chloe Brown, and the second one being Take a Hint, Dani Brown. These are 2 romance stories. The first one is an enemies to lovers, and the second one is a fake dating trope, more like friends to lovers. And they were both incredible. I was rooting so hard for these couples and watching them overcome their own prejudices, their own biases and insecurities in order to put themselves forward to love another person was really well done, really well written. I definitely was super emotional. They were incredible, and Talia Hibbert is a fantastic writer. I will definitely be reading more from her whenever she puts out more books. Yeah, so those are the first 2, and then the last one is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. If you're not familiar with this book, it has a large cult following, I would like to say, in the book community. My research has unofficially dubbed it the saddest book of all time. It follows 4 individuals from college age when they meet up until the end of their lives-ish. I don't know, maybe not like the end of their lives, but it's like 60s and 70s. It is a long book solely based on character development. What can I say about it? First off, there's 2 YouTubers that have made vlogs while reading this book. Spoiler free, so you can watch them. I'll link them down below, which I watched before I read A Little Life, and that was informative watching them, and then their summaries at the end. I feel like their summaries are gonna probably be better than mine. The amount of trigger warnings on this is like very long. It is ruthless. It's like hopeless in the beginning and hopeless in the middle and hopeless in the end. Hanya Yanagihara just like gives you like a little bit of hope and then just takes it away. She pulls no punches in this book. It follows these 4 guys, specifically more Willem and Jude. Jude being kind of the main character, and Willem and him and their like friendship and relationship and everything. And Jude has just been through a lot, and his life story is kind of revealed in more detail as the book goes on. Yeah, that book definitely had a very large impact on me, and it was not a good impact. I definitely read this book more out of like curiosity and wanting to be a part of the conversation, and it was not worth it. There's definitely scenes in this book that I still think about, and it just sucks. It sucked. I cried because of the hope provided, and then it was taken away. It was a very consistent plot line within the book of stuff is going really poorly, and then something great happens, and then that is ripped away and continues to prove in Jude's mind what he already thinks about himself. That's all I'm gonna say about it. I do want to just end that section of the video with please don't read this book. Just don't do it. I don't want anybody to think that this is like you're missing out on something that like you want to be a part of. If you're missing out on it, good job. There's definitely a lot of content in here that would provide trigger warnings. Please do your research if you decide that you want to. Decide after you research for like a month. All of that being said, I still gave it 4 stars because it was very beautifully written. I feel like Hanya Yanagihara accomplished for me as a reader what she set out to accomplish. So that's why that's such a high rating. And it is so good, but like, you, the collective you, do not need to read this book. Like, an individual who does the research, sure, go for it. I'm not going to stop you, but I don't think that you're missing out on anything. So yeah, that's A Little Life. So with all of that being said, those are the books that I wish I would have cried at. Definitely left my heart feeling tight for a variety of reasons. However, props to the authors of all of these books, as you have successfully made me emote. Good job. Yes. So yeah, that concludes this video. I hope that it was kind of fun looking at the list of books that made me emote in different ways. And if you find anything on this list that sounds interesting to you, I hope you pick it up. Hope you have a good cry. It was definitely fun to film and research for myself personally because I was very surprised that I've only cried at 3 books. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining me and watching this video. Hope you had a great time. I did. And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.